Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Power Hour on launching an I'm sorry, on AI's impact on teaching and learning. We have our questions here. Where are you joining from? What age do you work with? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your comfort with AI? Please go ahead and put your answers in the chat there. Um, we definitely want to hear all the different answers. I hope we have a wide variety of both age levels and comfort levels here with the AI. I'm Elizabeth Choice. I am the Senior Manager of Education at Young Entrepreneur Institute. We have a terrific workshop session awaiting you today, led by AI expert Joan Winkle. Um, so on our first slide, we are just asking you for these comfort questions. Please answer those. Keep answering those, even though we are going to look here at our agenda. So Joan is currently an entrepreneur, leading the entrepreneurship program at John Carroll University, where he has developed and oversees more than a dozen courses taken by roughly 600 students each year. During his 20-year career as an award-winning entrepreneurship teacher, he brings a mastery learning approach through which students learn relevant entrepreneurial skills and mindset techniques that will help them create and capture value in any career path that they choose. Over the last few years, Joan has become a thought leader in the teaching with AI space, consulting with and building programs for more than 35 high schools and universities from Cuba to Japan and fascinating places in between. As a fan of practicing what he preaches, Joan's most recent entrepreneurial venture is the Experiential Entrepreneurship Curriculum, an award-winning digital entrepreneurship curriculum used at more than 300 universities. So please like I said, keep throwing those items in the chat. We have a lot of answers now. I was kind of getting ahead of myself to let you get a chance. I see some 5, 6, 5 with AI, 4, 5, level 2. Oh, I like this. A 4. I'm glad I gave you a chance because we got all over the place. West Virginia, work with elementary, middle, high school. Yeah, we have all ages. Cleveland, Michigan, Brooklyn. Nice. Cleveland Heights, we have Brooklyn. Director of school programs with pitch labs. I like it. Oh, we got a 7. I'm about a 6, and that's only because in the last year I've really been using AI a bit more as I've left the classroom and kind of been developing some extra programs. Yeah, comfort level 2 or 3. Yep. So another 7. All right. So we got some variety in comfort levels, some variety in geographic, and in programs. We have the library and classroom, some out of school time. So we got a little all over the place. That's great. Um, so wonderful. So today, Joan is going to talk about 3 key areas, and that those are students' relationship with AI, educators' relationship with AI, and entrepreneurship in the classroom with AI. And just a reminder that we are recording this session, and the recording and any slides, links, resources, anything that is shared will be sent to you after the program. So please continue to share information, put any comments, any questions in the chat during the entire session, and we will answer as we can. And Joan, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to you.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. So thank you for the invite, Elizabeth and Eileen and team, and for spending some time with me. So I am going to chat just for a minute, and then I'm just going to kind of go through and start sort of showing you some things. I'm more of a show and tell type person rather than a just tell type person. Um, but overall, the approach I take is one of exploration and experimentation with this. I live in the college space, and so I work with a lot of high school teachers and high school administrators, so I understand some of that space, but I certainly don't live in it. And so all of my experience with this, comes from a college space. But so I wanted to talk a little bit today about kind of the student experience, teacher experience, and then about entrepreneurship. And I'll show some resources and give you some sort of tips and tricks and all that. And then I'll share with the team a whole bunch of resources and links to other resources and all that that they can share out with you. So it may feel like drinking from a fire hose a little bit here, but don't feel like you have to digest everything as I'm going. And then I'll leave a good chunk of time at the end for Q&A, asking me questions. What about this? Recommendations, any of that kind of stuff. So, without further ado, um, and I don't know how you guys, if you guys have a plan, Eileen and Elizabeth, but people could put questions in the chat if they want, or you can kind of hang on to them at the end and we can do it. So, whatever's going to work best here. I tend to be very flexible, so it's a-okay. Um, so the first part that I want to talk about a little bit is teachers and ways that we may be using some of these tools or ways that we can use some of these tools. I've been doing this for a good long time. I spend hours every day messing around with these things in my role as a teacher, in my role as a program director and developing programs and events and ideas and things, and in my role as a founder and consultant. So um, I just play around with a lot of this stuff and try to get really, really good at it so that it can help me become more efficient in what I do. And then it can kind of take some of the low value tasks off my plate and help me focus on some of the more higher value tasks. So like in my teaching role, for instance, a lot of the planning, a lot of providing feedback, a lot of that kind of work, I can offload a lot of it on, not all of it, but a lot of it onto some AI things. And then I can spend a lot more time individually with students and mentoring and building relationships and that kind of thing, which I think is a lot more valuable, right? So just kind of showing you a couple things. So ChatGPT is the one that I use most prominently. Um, there are a lot of Geminis and Claudes and different kind of tools out there. I just tend to stick with ChatGPT for the most part. It's where I started. I think it offers the capabilities that are most useful to me. I do have the expensive version, so I purchased the $200 a month version because it works for me for my businesses and other kinds of things. But stuff I'm going to show you is most of it's available in the free version. Some of it you may have to have the $20 a month version, right? One of the things though, and the reason I think the $20 a month version is well worth it is because of this one particular tool, right? So there are these custom GPTs, and I'm not a tech guy, so I don't understand what goes on behind the scenes, but the idea behind these custom GPTs is they're basically these like bots that people build to do one very specific task. And so it just engages with you and you get to do that task, right? Excuse me. So they're only available on the paid plan, right? So that's the thing. But if you go in here into this Explore tab, you can search, and there's tons and tons and tons of them, right? So think of it like an app store for these things. So there's writing ones, there's productivity ones, research ones, but the one that's really valuable, I think, is called this prompt maker one. And so what it does is it takes bad prompts and turns them into good prompts, right? So for instance, um, uh, design a 30-minute lesson plan for high school students to learn about minimum viable product creation, right? So if I were just to put this design a 30-minute lesson plan, if I was just to put that prompt in there, it's sort of a garbage in, garbage out model, right? So I'm going to get something and it's going to be okay. It's going to be decent, but it's not going to be really, really good, well sort of reasoned, well thought out output. But if I use this prompt maker custom GPT, if it's going to work for me, we'll wait on the technology. essentially what it does, Ruben, the guy who made this, essentially what it does is he takes whatever sort of bad prompt you've given it, and it turns it into a really good prompt that's in the structure that these tools like to see. So it gives it a role, it gives it a very specific objective, it gives it specific context, any kind of constraints. It gives it step by step. Here's what you should do, step one, step two, step three. It says, here's the output I want in the format of the output that I want. Come on. Uh, all right. Well, we may not be able to see this. We'll see. Um, but anyway, this right here, honestly, this is well worth the $20. Every single time that you want to use a prompt in ChatGPT, if you run it through this prompt maker, you're going to get much more robust output. You're going to get much more targeted output, and you're going to get much more sort of output that comes from this tool thinking a lot more intentionally and kind of rationally, right? Because it's got this step-by-step model that he builds in here. So this is, to me, this is like the most valuable tool that anybody can use, um, because it just really ups your game of how you're going to use this. Okay. So while that's going, I'll show you some of these other things here. And these are all documents. Again, I'm going to share a lot of this, all of this stuff with Elizabeth and Eileen and them, and they can pass it along to you. So when you get this, you're going to see there's a bunch of documents here, and in these documents are um, links to or written out like really effective prompts that teachers can use. That's some of these I'll show you. And then we've also got ones that students can use for their life as a student learner, but also as a sort of career prospect. So if they're thinking about jobs and careers, at the college level, we had that I think that's my job, is to get them ready for careers. And so I built and did a whole bunch of work around how to use some of these tools to help them get ready for careers, right? So from a teacher perspective, just so you can kind of see what's going to be going on in here, this is a document that this is the course creation prompts here. So this is a document where it goes through all of these, give me a course outline, give me lesson plans, activities for the lesson plans, quizzes, build out assessments, and then grading assignments or giving feedback, right? And so when you go through this document, I'm not going to go through it all. When you go through this document, what happens is you'll see the actual prompt that I have, and here's a example of one of these prompts that the prompt maker spits out, right? So this is the entire prompt, and you can see the extent of it, right? So it goes all the way down to here. And then you're going to see the output that it gives me. So with these documents, what you'll see is the conversations I'm having. So you can see the prompts, you can copy them, you can tweak them and tailor them to your perspective, your context. And then you can see the kind of output it gives me for all of this stuff. Okay. We'll go back here. Aha. See, so here you go. So instead of this bad one-line prompt that's going to give me bad output, right? Now what I've got is this entire thing. And again, you can see just the extent of it, but you can see the logic and sort of the rationale behind it. Give me a role. Here's the objective. Here's the audience or whatever context you want. So for this audience, this time frame, that kind of thing, tone and style. Here are the deliverables. So this is what I want. It's telling you, this is what I want you to do. Any kind of constraints, and then what exactly do I want it to give me back and how do I want it formatted? So with this, what I can do now is I can copy all of that and I can come over here and start a new chat with that prompt and I can tailor it to what I need, right? So just like I tell my students, I can't just copy and paste this stuff. I mean, I could, but that's just a really bad idea, because I don't want to take myself out of the equation. But I have a really good starting place to go in here and to tailor this particular prompt to my specific agenda, my specific context. Okay. So it's just an example so you can kind of see the difference between what this custom GPT will do for you, right? Um, yeah, so with this one, basically, if you're having to create a course from scratch, this sequence of prompts will do a really, really good job of helping you get an outline, get lesson plans for each module that it lays out, get activities for each lesson plan. If you quiz, generate quizzes for those lesson plans and those topics, and then all the way down to grading the assignments. And I'll talk about that in a minute because that tends to be a hot topic, right? But as you can see, the schedule, the kind of outline it gives me, so it's giving me week by week, and in this case, I said, it's a 2 day a week class. So it gives me topics, themes, activities, recommended readings. And then what I can do is I go to the next one and I can get lesson plans. So for um, each class session, I can use this prompt and now I can get a session plan, right? And I'm going to change this to match up with the particular class session topic and title, and I just keep going. And it gives me a really pretty robust lesson plan with here's the materials you need, here's a time breakdown, instructional activities. It goes through and it gives me a ton of information. So now what I can do is instead of building something from scratch, building a course from scratch, I can leverage the power of some of these tools to give me a really good draft and sort of collaborate with me on a really good draft. And then I can spend my time refining that draft. So ultimately, I may not spend as much time building a course in this case or redesigning a course. I may not spend as much time as if I had to do it from scratch, but what I am going to do is get a much better result in the end if I practice and I get really good with these tools, right? And that's the same thing I tell my students and tell teachers, just practice with it. Start playing around with it and start see what works for you and start playing around with some of these prompts because, I spent a long time putting these things together and kind of building out these prompts, and they're really pretty robust, and they're going to give you some really good output that you can start from, right? So like this one, again, this document, it's going to help you, or if you just want to make lessons or you just want to develop quizzes or whatever, you can kind of take it pieces and parts of this one, okay? The other one I wanted to point out here was ways to improve our teaching. So I think that just with all the things we have on our plates, and certainly for the high school and younger teachers, you have a lot more on your plate than I do at the college level for sure. Um, it's hard to put in the time and effort and do the work that it takes to improve ourselves in our teaching role. It's just hard work, and we do so much that it's hard to do. So there's a couple ways to do this here. One is, if you've got lecture notes, here's a prompt that, again, is going to give you a much better version of your lecture notes, or at least give you a better version that you can then adapt and tweak and tailor to your particular context, right? So you can improve your lecture notes without having to start from scratch and without having to just stay in your own brain. You can use this kind of bigger brain, right? Um, if you have a recording of classes, if you have take like an audio recording of a class, with that prompt, you can upload the audio recording and it will analyze that and it will give you feedback on how you could improve that particular class session, right? What seemed to work, what didn't, where were there kind of oopses in that, all that kind of thing. Um, Exit tickets. So if you use exit tickets, you have your students answering questions as they leave or anything like that. You can upload all that information here, and it does a fairly decent job with analyzing and synthesizing text. I find it doesn't do the greatest job with calculations and numbers and all that kind of thing, but if you've got that textual kind of reference, then it does a pretty decent job of analyzing that. And then the other one is this interactive study guide creation. And I've got a video here that you can access. What it does is it creates uh, an interactive study guide that you can give to your students. So it's like it creates a landing page, right? So it uses a couple tools. It uses Google's Notebook LM, quizzes to generate a quiz, and then Gamma, this tool here, to generate a landing page, right? So this is something I got from my father, who was a differential equations teacher. So what I did here with his permission is I uploaded a chapter from a textbook he wrote of differential equations, and it creates this study guide for that chapter. And so the power of this, I think, is that you can create these study guides for like every single class session, every single topic, anything that you have that you're wanting students to learn. You can create these interactive kind of study guides for them and share them with them so they have this as a resource, right? And it's all very kind of visually appealing. I don't know what any of this stuff is. It's all Greek to me, but my father said it's very accurate for the chapter that I used from his book. It pulls out the essence of what he's trying to get to and the main points and such. But you'll see it's very visually appealing, and there's a video walkthrough of really how to do this. And there's places you can start expanding it. There's a quiz here that the students can take a quiz, and then this part is a podcast. So in Google's Notebook LM, uh, sorry, you can create a podcast with any resources, right? So in this one, it's basically two people talking about all this chapter on differential equation stuff. Okay. So that's this interactive study guide creation. Okay. Um, these are really, really good ways for us to be able to review what we do and improve what we do as teachers in the classroom. Because at least, in my experience as a college professor, nobody ever gives me feedback other than students at the end of the semester, which I always have to take with a grain of salt, but nobody ever gives me feedback. And I just struggle to find the time or have the real expertise, honestly, because I was never trained as an instructional designer or anything like that. So I struggle with like, how do I get better at this? And so I just started to create some of these things to kind of help us improve how we go about teaching, right? And delivering this classroom experience for the students. So again, you'll see there's lots of very extensive prompts that you can copy and paste. You kind of tailor the context to fit whatever whatever context you have, and you're going to find that you start to be much more confident and you start to improve the work that you're doing in the classroom, right? Um, and then this guy here is there's like 15 different things that you can do either in the classroom or for homework. So these kind of things are like you can have AI, ChatGPTs, Geminis, whatever you use, be debate partners. You can have it do role plays with your students, simulations. There's a problem solving coach one, brainstorming buddies, real world case solver. So in this one, and again, each of these it's a very extensive prompt. So, for instance, to be a debate partner, this is the entirety of the prompt, right? It keeps going on and on and on. And so, when you do this and you copy and paste this prompt into ChatGPT, you're going to see that you're going to have a really interactive, pretty powerful experience debating essentially what you set ChatGPT up to debate in terms of the topic. And so these are just 15 other kind of tools that we can use in the classrooms or as homework, we can assign these things and tell students like, go do this, right? And then uh, when they're in ChatGPT, for instance, if that's something that we use, or whatever tool you may be able to use with them. But what we do is we have them share the chats, right? So any of these tools have this capability. And this is where some of the learning happens with me and my students, right? Because I want them to get better at these tools. And so what I do is I always have them engaging with, we basically use ChatGPT all the time, but sometimes they want to use Gemini because we're a Google campus. But what we do is I tell them, have the conversation, do the assignment, do the thing I'm asking them to do a debate partner thing, do a role play scenario, whatever the thing is. And then they share this chat with me. They get a link. They send me this link. And then what I can do is I can see the conversation they had. One, I can double check and verify that, you know, what part of the work is theirs versus ChatGPT's. So that's one way to start to double check people and help our students understand that you can't just copy and paste or have these tools do everything for you. But two, and more importantly, what it does is it helps me see how they're using these tools so that I can give them feedback on how to do a better, sort of more responsible and more thoughtful, intentional job of engaging with these tools so that their skill level in using these increases, which I think can help them as a learner, but also helps them with that career readiness piece because they're just going to have to know how to be really good with this stuff, whether we like it or not. It's just a fact of life, right? So that's the other thing is as much as you feel comfortable, have students using some of these tools, but always have them sharing the chats with you because then you can check their work, you can see how they're using it, and you can, if you need to, you can compare what it is they're turning in versus what ChatGPT gave them, right? There's always the game of cat and mouse. Again, I'm at college level. I choose not to play that game and try to, um, sorry, and try to catch them. Um, but I just choose not to do that. I don't have the time or the energy to do that. But this is a way to do it, right? So you can use that kind of share link. So that's what's going to be in this random ideas document are these 15 ways to really bring in different kinds of learning experiences. Different things might match for your courses or what you're trying to do better. There's Quizmaster stuff, Socratic guides, right? So walking them through kind of more of a Socratic dialogue, um, teaching AI, so having the students try to teach the AI something, right? So not just students learning from these tools, but actually them trying to take the role of that teacher and teach it back. So that can be a very powerful kind of way to do this as well. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, and then the other thing I put in here that you'll have access to are these two documents here. So one's kind of my statement of teaching philosophy, and one is uh, kind of the pedagogical framework for the entrepreneurship program that we run here at John Carroll University. The reason I put those in there is because with some of these AI tools, the more it gets to know me, the better output it's going to give me that's kind of tailored to me and to the way I do things and the way I want things. And so, for instance, part of what I do is I use this like statement of teaching philosophy. And if I'm doing some work around helping me to build courses or things I'm doing at John Carroll in our program, I use this document here as references and resources to give and attach and upload to the AI tool to say, here's this context, right? And so whatever tools you can give it, um, information about yourself, about your teaching philosophy, any of that kind of stuff, it's just going to help you to get much better feedback out of it that's a little more tailored to your particular context, right? The thing, the thing I tell my students that I'll also obviously tell you is some of the cautionary things that we have to be aware of are, privacy and data security, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, anything I put in to ChatGPT, I have to be aware of somebody else now might have access to that or does have access to that. And so I got to kind of think about how much do I want to give it, right? But on the flip side, I like to use this tool and I want this tool to get better. And it gets better by being trained by people using it. And so I also sort of feel like it's my responsibility because I'm such a user of it. It's my responsibility to use it as much as I can and to give it as much information and as much documentation as I can to help tailor the experience to me because I think that overall just helps all of us because it helps the tool to improve. But I do have to be careful. So the one thing I wanted to mention that I spoke about earlier that can be a little controversial is grading. And I don't mean grading, and I should say feedback. So, grading, it doesn't do a great job of grading. So ChatGPT and these tools, they like to be really positive friends. And so they'll always give positive feedback and they'll always give really high scores if you try to have it grade anything. It just likes to be a nice, positive, happy friend. But what you can do is you can use these tools to get feedback for your students' assignments, right? For instance, I do this a lot with a lot of my assignments. So I give ChatGPT the assignment that I've assigned. I give it a rubric if I have a rubric or whatever kind of documentation I might use to evaluate it. And then I will take student assignments. I'll anonymize them, obviously, but then I'll take the student assignments and I'll put those in. And there's a prompt in this document, I'll share with you, but it essentially says review the assignment, review the rubric, review the student submission, and give the student developmental feedback from where they were, where they are on this assignment based on the rubric so they can improve their assignment, right? And so for me, what happens is I can get students' feedback significantly quicker, right? And the feedback I get them is significantly more robust, right? Now, I don't copy and paste it just like I tell my students not to. I don't just go copy and paste the feedback and give it to them. I still have to read the assignment. I still review the ChatGPT feedback and kind of add my own 2 cents. What I have found is it takes significantly less time for me to do that than it used to for me to just kind of read through every assignment and write feedback for every assignment. And the students get it quicker and the students get much more robust feedback because it just gives a lot more feedback than what I could give. The other thing is it's not biased, right? I'm reading some student assignments. I have a relationship with my students, good, bad, or ugly, and that's going to influence how I grade them and how I give feedback. It's just a fact of life. We're human beings. These tools don't have that. And so it doesn't have that kind of bias built into it. Has other biases built into it around historical biases and gender and racial and ethnic biases that's baked into the data, but it doesn't have that bias of mine, right? And so when you're thinking about giving feedback, just think about it, right? It might be an interesting experiment to run. I was very hesitant for a long time to do that. But when I started doing it, and what I did was I gave students, here's my feedback. Here's the AI only feedback, and then here's AI with my additions to it feedback. I would give them all three, and I would have them kind of rank and evaluate which feedback do they prefer. And hands down, they preferred the, excuse me, the AI and me feedback. And they also enjoy getting it back much quicker. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to switch roles a little bit here. Ooh, excuse me, and talk a little bit about how students can be using these tools. So this is another document that you'll have access to. Um, and there's 2 sections to this. There's the life as a student and there's the life as a career prospect. And for the life of a student, this is, to me, this is one of the most popular things that I've done with a lot of my students. It's also one of the ones that kind of raises the hair on the back of the neck of a lot of teachers, but that's okay. I don't mind doing that. So anyway, what this does is it helps students get like pre-grade or pre-feedback on assignments, right? And so the students, just like I was mentioning how I might use AI to give them feedback, before they actually turn in an assignment, they can get feedback on how their assignment is by doing this, right? So if we are able and willing to give students a rubric of how we're going to grade things, they can take that, they can take the assignment, they can take the rubric, and they can take their submission, and they can run it through here, and it's going to start to give them some feedback on, developmental feedback, right? Here's places where it's not as strong. Here's places where it's really strong. Here's ways that you might think about improving these places that aren't very strong. So it doesn't do the work for them. It's not going to go rewrite things or whatever, but it's going to give them a lot of really good feedback so they can learn how to do a better job with that particular assignment, right? And they can learn some of the skills that we're trying to get them to learn through the iteration of the assignment. Now, what this does is it takes it out of my hands, so I don't have to say, turn in a draft, I'll give you feedback, and then you can turn in a final submission. I just say, go do this with ChatGPT. And by the way, do it 10 times if you want, right? Go through this iteration 10 times because each time what the student has to do is they have to read through ChatGPT's feedback and they have to decide, does that make sense? Does it not? Do I change it? Do I not change it? How do I change it? So they're still doing the work. They're just getting some of that prompting and they're starting to see the thought processes around how do I improve my work from version A to version B. But they're doing it at a very efficient clip, right? And so this is a really, really popular one that I think makes a tremendous difference for a lot of my students because they're learning much at a much deeper level because they're going through this iteration instead of just turn in an assignment, do it one time, turn it in, get a grade at some point in the future, and then you've moved on to something else. Like, where's the learning there? The learning happens here through the iteration. And these tools can take the iterations off of my plate and put it on their plate so the students can do it multiple times very, very quickly, right? There's other ones in here where AI can kind of act as a tutor or a mentor for students. It can quiz them on things. It can be sort of that debate argument partner, right? So if they're having to write essays or defend positions or think critically about certain topics, it sets up these, ChatGPT or whatever, it sets up these tools to be an argument partner or a debate partner to force them to really think critically and have to defend their position and defend their opinions. Again, instead of them having to rely on that conversation with one person and set up the timing of how do I have this conversation, whatever, they have access to this thing as many times as they want, anytime that they want, right? So there's lots and lots here. I won't go through all this. I want to get down here to uh, where are we at? Excuse me. Also to this, life as a career prospect. So again, I'm at college level. So, I believe at the college level, my main job is to help students figure out what they want to do as a career and help them get there. That's my job. And so I spend a lot of time working with students around what do you want to do? What kind of things are you good at? What kind of jobs are out there? How do you prepare yourself for them? How do you stand out in the job market? All that kind of stuff. And so what I did here, these are all custom GPTs that I built. So again, these are these things that they'll do one very specific task over and over again, as many times as people want to use them. But these are the main things that I spend a lot of time with my students doing. So helping them create resumes. So again, this is something, and these are things you don't have to have the pro version to use these things. So it just gives you a link and you can do that. Um, Practicing job interviews. So this is a hugely popular one with my students. They practice a job interview. So they set up, well, here we'll look at it. They set up ChatGPT to say, be this person for this kind of job, right? What position are you looking for? What industry or company type? And then are any specific things about that student they want to highlight? So the student gives it that information. And then what happens is this custom GPT takes on kind of the interviewer persona and will interview the student. So the student gets practice at the skill before the skill actually counts, right? And that's what a lot of these things do is it helps them practice skills before they have to actually do the skill when it counts. And I think that's just such a tremendous boost for the students, for me, right? My students are just so much more productive and so much more excited because they have access to these kind of tools that just make them better, have the potential to make them better at what they do, right? They can practice selling, right? Being a salesperson. They can investigate sort of pitfalls of a specific job. So they can give it a specific job and it kind of lays out for this kind of a job. Here are things that people don't think about. Here are skills that people maybe overlook that could be valuable for that job. So before they start training or preparing themselves for a certain job they may be interested in, they can learn a lot more about that particular job and the kinds of kind of micro skills and other things that might be valuable in that type of a role, right? So there's tons of resources there as well for students to use either as a learner, right? That's all this stuff up here, or as that career prospect. Um, and any of this stuff, again, when you get access to it, it's a lot. I admit that. I know that. There's a big fire hose here. But when you get access to this stuff, you just kind of check it out and just sort of think through, okay, do I need to design a whole course or redesign a whole course? Am I looking more for just maybe some specific activities for a particular class session? Am I looking for, I need some better assessments for this particular activity, for this particular topic. So you don't have to like dive into everything all at once, but just start to kind of pick and choose what might be valuable for you, right? From this one, just take some notes if you lecture, right? Or if you use slides, any of that kind of stuff. Just take those and plop them in here, and you start to play with it, and you start to see, here's how this thing can be really valuable to me to improve what I do. Take some of these things and give them to your students in class if they're allowed to do that, or as homework assignments, right? Have them play around with some of this stuff. Have them share the chat links with you so you can see the work that they're doing. And you guys can start talking about how we're using these things. Excuse me. So, something else I wanted to talk about was, some of the concerns here, right? So, there is a lot of bias in these things, in these LLMs, these large language models, ChatGPTs and Geminis. There's a lot of bias built into these things. They're trained on data that exists out there in the world, and there are a lot of cultures, there are a lot of genders and racial and ethnic groups who don't have as much information out in the world, right? And so there's these biases that are in these tools. And so we need to be sure that students are kind of aware of that and talk to them about that. And then we also want to be really clear in our expectations with students when it comes to who's doing the work, right? And that's a slippery slope. And I think at least in my world at college, the students are wanting to use this. They're wanting to use it for everything all the time because they think it just is quicker. And that's true, but quick doesn't mean good. And so I have a lot of conversations with my students to kind of point out to them, if you're just copying and pasting and you're just doing the bare minimum, number one, you're not learning, right? Which again, I hope they have some interest in learning. But number two, um, you're not performing well, right? Because it's very obvious if that's all they're doing, it's very obvious that that's what they're doing. So I think talking and setting some expectations up front to say, these are the ways you can use these tools, these are the ways you can't use these tools, and having some sort of almost, contractual type conversation with them around, here's how we're going to use this, here's how we're not, I think is really, really valuable. To do for any of us, right? And just setting the expectations because the students have a tremendous amount of anxiety around, can I use these? How can I use these in this class versus that class versus that class, right? And I know school districts are different. You guys are probably going to have all your policies in place. But just being real clear with students, I think is only fair to do that. Okay. Okay. A couple other things. Uh, so a couple other tools I just want to make you aware of if you're not already. Perplexity. So I use Perplexity a lot for more research kind of things. I'll air quote it. But I just find that if I'm looking for uh, a tool that's going to help me by using more legitimate sources and well-researched sources, Perplexity does that way better than ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the other ones I use. So if I'm wanting students to do some research kind of reports or anything like that, I will direct them over and say use Perplexity as a starting place. It's the same sort of functionality, right? It's just to have a conversation with it, but it just does a much better job with sources, with more credible sources, right? Excuse me. And then the other one is this Gamma. And this one, it creates slides or landing pages, right? And it does just a crazy job. If you've got lecture notes or you've got Word documents that you've got that have, details for a class session, you can paste that in or you can upload it and it'll create a really visually appealing slide deck for you, right? Or we could do it this way. We're going to do the hidden symbolism in famous paintings, right? Just so you can see how this works. So I can give it any topic up here. What it's going to do is give me an outline of the slides it's going to create. Do, do, do. I can go in here and I can tweak things, right? I can move things around. I can adjust things. I can design it, if I want to design it. And then within a matter of minutes, it creates this much more visually appealing slideshow that certainly than I can do. I'm not a designer. And for my students, at college, we do a lot of presentations, have them practicing a lot of presentations. And I get really tired of seeing just crappy presentations. And so I've got my students using this because they're able to create much more effective presentations, right? So, you see just in a matter of minutes, it's created a pretty visually appealing presentation, looks nice and tight and concise. It's got some nice images. And now what I can do is I can go in here just like I would in PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever, and I can start, changing the text, I can change the images, any of that kind of stuff. So again, what I tell my students is if you use a tool like this, it doesn't replace the work that you need to do. But what happens is instead of them having to start from scratch and create a presentation from scratch, and it ends up not being great, right? They don't have great visuals, they don't have a great design or layout. Instead of that, they get this first draft and then they go in and they start refining it and they start updating it and they start kind of contextualizing it for their particular context, right? And the end result is just much, much better. Um, and so those are tools, right? The three that I always kind of recommend people play around with from a teaching standpoint is ChatGPT or whatever chatbot, LLM that you use or that your school says you can use. Perplexity for more kind of research, deep thinking kind of stuff, and then Gamma for slides. Okay. Okay, I'm going to switch, but keep your questions going in the chat for questions that you have along the way. And then I'll spend a little bit of time here talking about some entrepreneurship stuff. And then we'll open it up. We'll have a lot of time for questions and answers if you want to know more about something or things I didn't cover, anything like that. Okay. Uh, okay. So the last part, when it comes to entrepreneurship, so I've been teaching entrepreneurship for, I don't know, probably close to 20 years. And again, I'm at a college level. I think it's a much more valuable experience for students if we have them working on ideas for things that are meaningful to them. Instead of just inventing some conceptually huge thing, right? Like, I want to start a restaurant. And at the age of 16 or 17, that's just for the vast majority of people, that's too far removed from their reality, right? And it's not a realistic thing and it may not be all that meaningful. And so, there are some tools, and again, I'll give you guys access to some of this stuff. There's some tools here that you can use to help your students figure out some ideas that are a little bit more meaningful to them. And so this one, what it does is it walks students through a process where they identify what interests they have, what skills they're good at, and what kind of impact they want to have. So, what kind of populations of people do they want to impact, or what kind of social problems, or whatever they want to work on in the world. And it helps walk them through how do we put all those three things together to identify here's something that's a little bit more meaningful. Here's more of a purpose-driven um, space where you can start to work on ideas. And what I find is if my students are working on ideas that are more meaningful to them, that are more related to their kind of purpose and passion, they're more bought in, they do more work, they're more excited to do the work, right? All these benefits happen. And so at the beginning of our courses, we have students go through this exercise and we revisit it because we want them always kind of focused on what's something that's meaningful for you, right? And then the other part that I think doesn't get enough attention in entrepreneurship, and I think should be kind of the core of all of it, is this skill around kind of who are your customers and how do you get useful information out of your customers. I think we gloss over that a lot of times or don't spend enough time on it. And we move on to marketing and finance and more of the business discipline stuff, which is important. But this is I think, a much more transferable skill and a much more important skill for entrepreneurs. So this one is how do we figure out who are ideal customers, right? So if I understand, here's kind of part of my purpose, and here's a lane that's going to be meaningful to me. I really enjoy golfing and I really enjoy giving back to, younger kids and whatever, right? So now I've started to think about, are there ideas I have around golfing and maybe younger underprivileged kids, right? Is there some idea there? Well, now I'm going to be a lot more excited to work on that idea. So then I can think about, okay, who would the customers be for this idea? And we put them through this exercise where they start having to think about the customer's experience, right? So put yourself in the customer's shoes and build out um, these sort of customer statements, right? So what they do is they come out of this and they have a much better sense of, for this idea that I want to work on, who are going to be my ideal customers, right? What specific kind of people and what specific kind of experience are they having? Because then what I can do is I can spend time going to find those customers and I can actually be interviewing them. So I can get valuable information from them about my idea. That skill is tremendously valuable no matter what career path people go down. Because essentially what you're doing is you're trying to think about who are the people who have resources that I need, where do I find them? And when I do find them, how do I get valuable information from them? Right? So this is a hugely valuable skill. I use it all the time at work with colleagues, in my businesses, all that kind of thing, right? And so this is sort of a customer interview script where they're asking about what's the problem that you experience? What do you feel? Right? So give me some of these emotion words. When was the last time you tried to solve the problem? So is this something that is really a problem for you, or is it just sort of a mosquito in your ear, a little gnat that's bothering you? What don't you like about the solution that you're currently using to solve the problem? So what kind of things might I be able to add on to my idea that you don't like about other ideas or other solutions that you've been using, other products? And then how did you discover it? So where could I go to do some marketing, right? So these three things, helping them figure out what's a purpose, what's part of a meaningful idea, who might be ideal customers, and then when you go to find some of these customers, how do you get valuable information from them? To me, I think that's a whole course in and of itself. It should be a course in any entrepreneurship program because I think out of all of these entrepreneurship skills, that's the most valuable one, hands down. It's the most valuable one that I found in my personal experience. And just in talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, right, that customer focus is so incredibly um, necessary for success, in the business world, period. And it's one of those things that my phone can't teach me that. My phone can teach me a lot about marketing, a lot about finance, a lot about supply chain. It can do all those things. My phone cannot teach me, how to interview customers, where do I find customers, those kind of things, right? And so what's meaningful to me? And so those are the kind of tools that I think are going to be really, really valuable for those of you in the entrepreneurship space that can really enrich your students' experience. Okay. All right. So yes, I'm at an hour. So my goal was to blather on for about an hour, and I know there was a lot of fire hose stuff there, and then leave a big chunk of time for questions and answers, because usually I do a lot of these kind of things, and usually there ends up being a lot of questions. And so now I would be more than happy to open it up for questions.
Okay. So first of all, thank you. That was an
Yes.
incredible wealth of information. So very, very, I also appreciate that you allowed for like the fire hose and the baby steps and and also the distilling down. Like, hey, if anything, try these three, right? Like start with ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gamma, like here's some places to start. So that was really helpful. Just sit and play and I appreciate the just I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
So thank you but really that was great. We did have a couple questions or comments here. So back when you were talking about the job interviews and things, Eileen did ask if you have any examples of a sample job interview in any of those resources. So I don't know if you want to go back into there or just like, is there in any of that, or if you want to maybe
I
include that in the resources or
I thought it would be really valuable if
Uh,
we could hear one because I'm curious about how students talk to ChatGPT and how they get the feedback and what it sounds like.
oh
yep.
As someone
yeah,
who hasn't done that, I've only
gotcha.
done the written.
Oh.
Okay,
So I was
interesting.
curious, how do you debate? How do you have a sample job interview? What does that feel like and sound like?
Uh, yes, I
Will it
can.
work on Zoom to do that? Will we?
Probably not.
Okay.
That might be a little, or I should say, if it does, that's beyond my very meager technical expertise. But so here, let me do this. And that's a good point that I forgot to mention. Thank you, Eileen, for this. So with some of these things, right, the job interview thing, the debate partner, the argument creation, that kind of a thing. The really cool thing now with these is students can use voice, right? So it doesn't have to be this typing thing anymore. And so the typing thing was good, but now that they can use a voice, they can actually have a conversation and hear a voice back, right? And that skill is even more valuable than just typing, especially when it comes to these kind of things, right? So I will dig a couple up and put them in the drive folder, links to them so you can kind of see that. Um,
Great.
yeah, that's a good
It
thank
just, I think for people our age, and maybe my age is even older than some of the other folks in the session here,
you.
I'm really comfortable writing,
Yeah,
and I'm also comfortable talking to people.
right.
But for young people who are more comfortable watching videos and talking to their phone, it is probably a different experience.
Yeah. And my students love it. My students love these things because they can have this conversation, right? And I try
Very
to also,
private.
yeah, and I try to also in that vein, I try to also really talk to my students and be like, okay, look, you have to be really careful in how much
Yes.
you sort of look at this thing as a real thing, right? Like there's a line and you got to be
It's
really
not your
careful.
friend.
Yeah, it's not your friend. It is a technology that's a tool that you can use, right? And there's a fine line there that I think a lot of people cross, even without knowing it nowadays. So I think being aware of that is good too.
Yeah, I also someone had commented on the gamma, and I was telling Joan before the session I had my first I did my first gamma after an AI workshop with him this summer. I learned about gamma and did I did my first slide presentation with gamma, and it went over so well. And then I actually used it again as just a jumping off point for another presentation. So I had gamma kind of generate, and then I based my slides off that. So you can use it, as a reference point too. So it's great.
Yeah,
Again, the input, like always use your brain too. It doesn't have to just, be the cut and paste, but it's a great thing to generate and then build on it and use it. So, but you don't
yeah,
have to just, you don't have to just start from scratch. You can start from AI. So
right. All these things, it's basically look at it as like it's a collaborator. That's all it
yep.
is, right? And if I look at it as anything other than a collaborator, then I think I'm giving it too much credit and I'm taking myself too much out of the loop. And I think that's just really dangerous for a lot of reasons, professionally and personally can be.
I've said that like I'm the bread on the sandwich. Like I have to have really good meaningful, I think I said that this summer too. Like I have to have really good like meaningful prompts. I have to use my brain really well or else it's not going to be valuable like meat in the sandwich. And then I also have to have like really meaningful edits and like collaboration on the other side too. So you got to like think on both sides, but just use your
Yeah.
brain to have on the for the bread. Um, cool. And then we had another Ron added Julius AI as a data
Mm.
analysis tool. So it was another resource added in the
Yeah.
chat. So thank you, Ron.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good call, Ron. A lot of these things suck at data analysis, right? So Julius is a good one that does a much better job than these chat ones. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, please, anybody too, right? Like it is all collaboration. So like we welcome anybody who has great other tools, of course,
Ooh.
please share. Does anybody, oh yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, I've been I'm Ron, I'm an instructional designer, a consultant, Triton Consulting. I help experts and nonprofit organizations scale their impact and monetize their intellectual property through curriculum design and program design. I specialize in teaching entrepreneurship and workforce development for youth and young adults. One of the ways I am integrating AI from an educator perspective is I've been using Mentimeter. It allows learners to engage immediately during a facilitation or a workshop. And with Mentimeter, recently they included AI agents. So you can actually design an interactive facilitation presentation, and an AI agent will design it for you with different prompts, assessments, multiple choice that students can engage with from a mobile device or from the laptops. I just came by way of Brooklyn, New York, and the New York public schools are not allowed to use mobile devices anymore. So students are able to log in with their access code from their laptops. But the course facilitation presentation piece, Mentimeter has updated with AI agents in their presentation. So I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with it, but it allows that interactivity that facilitation to be more of a conversation with the students in real time. And you collect the data on the back end as well.
That's awesome. What's it called? Mentimeter?
And yep, I'll put it right.
Yeah,
Mint,
throw that in
We've
um,
used Mentimeter for word clouds and for
there.
gathering feedback in meetings. That's the use that we've used it before
mhm,
in group conferences and classes.
yep,
Real live feedback where you can look at the word
yep.
cloud or you can look at polls.
Mhm. Yeah, so we used it 2 weeks ago for high school students to understand the relationship with money. And we had different assessments as we went through and learned from where they stood initially into, talking about money as being a tool. And so we were able to see that data and that progress by the end of the facilitation.
Nice. And I think too, some of the power of these, the more you play around with some of these things, a lot of them sort of you're gonna have a very similar user experience with them, right? In terms of the role you in like how you engage with them. And so the more you play around with these things, the more you can also start stacking them, right? And so you've got like this stack of things where you're like, all right, let me use Gemini or let me use ChatGPT or whatever to get this and do this thing, and then let me plug that in and take that and use Mentimeter for creating a more interactive
Exactly.
thing, right? And it's not like you're necessarily having to learn a whole entirely new thing. The
Right.
way that you engage with them is going to be very similar. It's just, you got to learn the ins and outs of a new platform, but the way you engage with it is going to be very similar. So that's another thing too, is, these things aren't always standalone. It's like you use one and then stack another one and stack another one. If you wanted presentations, you can get stuff out of a Google Gemini and then you can create a presentation in Gamma and then you can run it through Mentimeter for a conference presentation or whatever, right? And you can start doing that. And I think that becomes super productive. Yeah, that's good stuff. What else? Anybody else have questions? What do we got?
I don't see question. There's some, at work we use Copilot, in training right now, learning about consensus AI. There's
Hmm.
some examples. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Doan?
Ooh.
Oh,
I had a question also about some of the things I saw in the prompts.
Hmm.
I noticed that when you were scrolling through, there were some things that said cringe words.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Or are we getting too deep?
No, we can go wherever you need to go. No, so part of this is there are with these large language models, there's words that it likes to use. And there's language that it likes to use, and so I'm trying to find uh, where this was. Uh, no. Um, and so part of in the instructions, part of what I'm trying to do, I want to give it some constraints, right? And I'm always wanting to say, don't do this, stay in this lane, that kind of thing. And so this is more in line with like
So
don't
those are
use
things you've added and you've found to be valuable. Those aren't
exactly.
sort of standard.
No, I mean it's just things where I kind of go like I don't like these words. Like, don't people don't talk this way, right? There's
Right, right.
phrasing and types of words that like we just don't use. And so as I find those, I just kind of keep a list of them. When I see them over and over again, and I just kind of add it to the list, and I'm like, look, don't use this language because it
Delve.
sounds too non-human.
Got
I
it.
like that. We do have a question. What platform is better for making a schedule?
Uh, so that one I don't know. Scheduling is not my strong suit, and I've always been terrible at it, and I've chosen to not get good at it. So I'm sorry, Taria. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but I can't help you on that one. Ron
Ron
Okay, no,
says
likes
you
Monday.
Monday.
you said it right, Taria.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Ron likes Monday, but I can't help you on that one. I
Oh,
just
well, I
try
have
to
another question.
I just try to
Yeah.
hang on for dear life and hope my schedule works.
Okay. Um, Earlier you were doing something with the rubric,
Hmm.
and I had a question on that. So how, like, if I'm giving feedback and this, like, from the observation,
Yeah.
and what kind of platform should I use to put my information in for a rubric?
Like to create one, you mean?
Yeah, so yes, yes.
Yeah, well, that's where I always just sort of default to ChatGPT, or
Mhm.
if there's a platform that your school or company or whatever may have access to a paid version of something, you could use that. But
So we have access to ChatGPT and Gemini.
okay, so I would use ChatGPT, and if you use that prompt maker, right, and you give it some context that I need a rubric for, here's the assignment, here's the context of the class, whatever, give it as much context as you can and say, I need this rubric, and then get a much more robust prompt from that prompt maker custom GPT. You tweak that a little bit, and then you run that prompt, and you're going to get a really good start for a pretty solid rubric. In
See,
all,
I don't think we have that prompt maker on our chat GBT.
so it
I don't
depends on
see
if you have the plus version or not.
no,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
if you don't, right, this
Hmm.
is part of where you can kind of create, um, yeah, you can kind of create your own, right? So you want it to, you can tell it like you're an instruction, you're an experienced instructional designer with a specialty in creating, effective rubrics. Here again, here's the context. It's for this class, this level of school. Here's the assignment, copy and paste it or attach the assignment. If there's any specific elements of a rubric you want, like I really want to strut to focus on the critical thinking or whatever, right? You put all that context into a prompt and you throw that in there, right? Give me a rubric for this assignment. You're gonna get a really good start to it anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Something
And
I
that,
wanted to, ooh, go ahead.
nope, it was probably exactly the same thing that you noticed. Go
What's that?
ahead. That said, someone was asking about Gemini.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh,
Dawn, if it's okay to add,
Yeah.
repurposing past rubrics and uploading actual files to GPT
Oh.
um, can actually give reference to what a
Yeah.
previous
mm,
rubric would look like, and then to update or revise accordingly to another course or another lesson. That way, it can always reference that actual file. So there's a plus sign on the prompt area of your GPT or your Gemini
Hmm.
that allows you to add a file and you can sync it to, or it says add photos or files. You can add a previous PDF or document and it will reference what you're looking to revise or to update.
Okay.
Um, and that's another way of doing it. If you connect you log in and you connect to your Google Drive and you have your documents, it'll sync to your Google Drive as well. You can click on your Google triangle icon and it'll go to
Mhm.
your drive and you can be able to upload. I'm just talking in circles now, but you can be able to upload
No.
documents to reference.
Okay, I see it. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's
So that
Yes.
all
would be especially helpful because it would be like your style and your priorities and
Exactly.
like what you're looking for
Exactly.
in your classroom. Yeah.
Same goes with your previous lesson plans as well that you want to scale out
Mhm.
and revise for different grades.
Oh, thank you. I'm showing this to my teachers.
yeah.
Can you put papers in or student assignments that were graded well? Would that help?
So
Use
part
those as a
of
reference. Sorry.
Oh, would that privacy? Ooh, privacy. Sorry.
Yeah, there's privacy. So, well, but this is one thing that I do. And so using exemplars, right? And especially when it comes to giving feedback. So in my classes, one I should say this, in my classes, because I upload student work to ChatGPT, in my classes we have a conversation and I tell students this is what I'm going to do. If you do not want me to do this, tell me and I will not do this for yours, right? So they have the right, it's their work, they have the right to make that decision, but I am very clear with them on what I'm doing and why. And I explain why, right? Here's the reason I'm doing this. I'm not trying to like shirk my responsibilities. I'm trying to do better by you, right? But and some do elect to not do that. But when I'm giving feedback to students, what I do is I can say, here's an example A, B, C, D, and F paper, right? And so I give it, that's all part of that context that I need to give it. And the more of that I can do, the more targeted and the sort of more robust um, feedback in this case or rubric, as Ron said, you upload rubrics and it gives you that context. So something quick I wanted to point out that I forgot to mention that relates to exactly what Ron was explaining. So in ChatGPT, there's this little plus button, right? And depending on which model you have, free, plus, or pro, you'll have different things here. But excuse me, you can add photos and files. Two things that I find to be really, really valuable for students. One is this study and learn. And what happens is, as an example, if I were to just give ChatGPT this math problem, it gives me an answer. And it kind of walks through it step by step. But I know my students, and I know my students are not going to pay attention to the step by step. They're just going to go, what's the answer? Right? And they're going to be like, boom, here's the answer. So if I just use ChatGPT normally, it's going to give me the answer. But if I turn, and this is available in the free version, right, in all versions. So if I go to the plus and I go to this more thing here and I turn on study and learn and I give it the same question, what happens is it starts to ask me questions and try to help me walk through the steps one by one, right? And I have to engage with it. Now, it doesn't leave me hanging and it still is kind of sort of giving me the answer. But that's okay, right? But from a student perspective, if I'm trying to really get them to learn and I'm trying to get them to practice and understand some of the steps in the process, if I have them turn this part on, they don't just get answers. They don't just get the feedback or the answer or the definition or whatever. It starts walking through and making them think and respond to get to a place where they get it, right? And it's telling me like, oh, good try, but that's not quite right. And I'm telling it, oh, it's getting complicated, right? And it's trying to empathize with me. Ah, it's totally understandable, right? So at the end of the day, I'm still getting the answer, but I actually had to put in some of the work to get the answer, right? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, again, if you go in here, I think this may only be available in the paid versions, but it's this Canvas feature. And what this does, excuse me, I'm sorry. What this does is it creates sort of like think of it almost like a collaborative space, right? That ChatGPT will create for this particular conversation. And so part of what can be frustrating for me is, if I'm designing a lesson plan, let's say, and I'm going back and forth and no, tweak this. Oh, we forgot about this. Add this element to it. It's all garbled up in the conversation I'm having in this one conversation. So then I have to go back and kind of cut and paste and figure out where did I talk about that? And that can be a little frustrating. But if I turn this Canvas option on, again, go to the plus and the more, and there's a Canvas thing here. What it does is it puts it in this sort of collaborative workspace, right? So now what I can do is to say, um, I just highlight, oh, sorry, I got to edit it here. And I can go down here and I can just say, let's say, oh, right. And instead of it adding things at the end of the conversation and continuing to add things at the end of the conversation and me kind of losing track, it makes the changes within the conversation as I'm going, right? And so this becomes a much uh, easier and less frustrating way to collaborate with ChatGPT if you're trying to, build lesson plans or build rubrics or anything like that.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have just a couple more. There was that question about your thoughts on Gemini and its suite portability. I don't know if
What
you have any thoughts on that.
what was the question? Sorry.
It was just that. Any thoughts on
Oh,
Gemini? I think I don't know. Look, do you want to elaborate on that? The person, this is Laketra. That was just the,
I don't
the
use
question. I don't
Gemini
know
a
if it's just you.
lot. Um,
Okay,
we're at John Carroll, we're a Google school, so our students have access to the pro version, to the paid version, because John Carroll's given them access to all of that, and so a lot of the students are using it because they don't have to pay for the
sure.
paid version.
And then the last one here is Kelly asked about ChatGPT, which Ron has given some thoughts. So it was about a flyer and ChatGPT transferring to Canva. And Ron's thought is just working Canva AI
Yeah.
first and then maybe tweak it in AI in the AI agent to revise it, maybe. And then I also see that Ron's hand is up. So maybe we'll just let Ron.
Yeah,
No, I
it
was
goes.
just sorry.
No, I was just going to echo what Ron said. For
I
that
don't
that
know.
kind of a thing,
Don't and Ron, you
no,
can.
no, 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 you're good. For that kind of a thing, I found the same thing. Like it doesn't work to try to, do something in a ChatGPT or a Gemini and then transfer it over into a Canva or, yeah. But Canva's AI, I don't use it a ton, but I mean, I've other students I've had that use that say they really kind of like it and that it's pretty good for them.
Um,
Great.
yeah, I was just gonna
Awesome.
say about Gemini. A big differentiator with Gemini versus ChatGPT. I'm a ChatGPT person. Um, but a huge differentiator with Gemini is that it's sewn into all Google products. So Gemini is in every single thing, your Google Meets, your Google Drive, your calendar, and your inbox. So when it comes to using Gemini, and it has a little bit more privacy protection than ChatGPT does as well. But again, I'm kind of signed up with ChatGPT right now. But Gemini is sewn in through your entire Google workspace. So that's one big differentiator versus the other LLMs.
Yeah, and it's the same with like Copilot if you're a Microsoft school, you know what I mean? Copilot is their version and it's going to be in everything. And so, that's why like at John Carroll we're a Google school and so they have access to that and they like it because it's in everything. Um, but I just always use ChatGPT, so I'm more of that camp.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you. This is incredibly valuable. I'm going to start winding down. I know we have a couple announcements. I'm going to let Eileen talk for a minute about Inspire, and then I'm going to take it back over. But thank you, Joan. This was
Yes.
so incredible, and thank you everyone for your input and collaboration. I know there's some great information in the chat along with Joan's comments, and thank you everybody. So Eileen, do you want to talk about Inspire a little bit?
I will just give a short pitch for Inspire. If you are in Northeast Ohio or within reasonable driving distance, we'd love to see you in person this weekend at our Inspire conference, Inspire 25. It's our 11th year. And we have Friday night an after school session, 3:30 to 6. And then Saturday, most of the day, we have a new venue this year, the Cuyahoga County Public Library, Parma Snow. It's fairly convenient off the highway. We have an incredible workshop focused on building courage. That's one of the entrepreneurial skills that we haven't really dug into before. So we're really excited about that, working with Scott Simon, a local author, founder, and entrepreneur himself. He's going to be leading that workshop and session with lots of take-home tools. And we have Michael Bonner, a very well-known teacher from Ron Clark Academy. Lots of Yippee resources and educator take-home tools and giveaways and things. So lots of fun. We'll feed you well, and lots of friends too. So if you're so inclined, it's not too late to register. We'll put the link in the chat. And if you're already registered, we can't wait to see you.
Yes, excellent. All right. And just a couple notes. Our next Power Hour will be December 3rd. That will be centered around resources to support financial literacy. And we will have some great speakers and material for your program. So make sure to save that date, December 3rd. Excellent news. Everyone at this session today can receive 200 Yippee points for attending here today. These points and funds will be available to everyone who's here today, regardless of your geographic area. So I will share the code for that in the chat in just a moment. And if you don't know anything or not much about Yippee, we do partner with this online platform that is run by the Burton D. Morgan Foundation, which has many resources available. They can be purchased via Points for Educators. It is a grant-funded source for many types of materials, resources for educators, both in and out of school time. If you have not investigated or registered for Yippee on the website, please stay. We are happy to help you, give you more information and help you register and answer any questions about that. We are always curious about how we're doing and value your feedback. So I will also be putting in the chat a link to a survey to share any comments about today's session. So stay tuned in just a second for the code for Yippee, as well as the survey link for feedback right here in the chat there. Also, please remember that we are here, Young Entrepreneur Institute team, for you. Please reach out to us. We want to be here for you and help support your program in any way possible. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Joan, for all of your valuable resources and all the information that you shared. This has been phenomenal. So thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, let us know any topics. If you want more AI, we'll come back with more AI. If you want different topics, we'll be happy to find guest speakers and resources to support whatever area of entrepreneurship and financial literacy you are looking to add to your program.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Dawn.
Yes, thank you.
A pleasure.
And we will share all these resources. You'll get an email from us. We'll also have the video uploaded to our website and our YouTube page. And let us know if you're having trouble finding something that Joan referenced.
Happy to be a resource for anybody that needs it as well. They'll share my contact information when they send stuff out to you.
Yes, we will.
And take his course next summer if you're curious. Elizabeth and I spent 3 days learning about the teaching entrepreneurship curriculum and lots of things, taking the course over the summer. So our students are getting the benefit of lots of these great tools.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Thank you all. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.